This is what we are. We are.
So I welcome to the stage the lovely couple you have seen around, Jasmina Tesanovic and Bruce Sterling. Please a big applause for them. Hello. Yeah. Do you have a mic?
Hello.
Hola, Barcelona. So yeah, that's all true. I am Bruce Sterling. This is Jasmina Tesanovic. I am from Austin, Texas. And Jasmina here is from Belgrade, Serbia.
Anybody here from Belgrade? Anybody here from Serbia? No.
Not even one. So we are the Austin-Beograd axis, and we got married. So we had to figure out where to live, because, you do that. So we live in Torino. We live in Italy because we're two foreigners. So, we decided what city we were going to be in, but then we had to decide on what kind of personal domestic arrangement do we have? I mean, should we live like people from Austin? Barbecue, blues music. Should we live like people from Belgrade, River Danube, Balkan performance art? We could kind of go either way, but, we thought to ourselves, why don't we try a kind of idealistic utopian experiment and kind of planned living? I mean, we know all these people in Torino, and they're very into open source, and we know all these Fab Lab guys, and we're keen with open source hardware people, and we like the electronics industry. Why don't we just go and press that a little? So we're going to show you some pictures from our experiment, Casa Jasmina from Torino. And I'm just dying to build a new house out of this reconfigurable thing here. So whoever holds the clicker gets to talk.
Okay.
Right? And the two of us will go. So
we fight over everything,
Slide number one. Hit it, baby. Take it.
Okay, so he took the beginning of my talk anyway, but that's the truth. We wanted to have a house of our own, but we were also, we were bored of having the old-fashioned way of having a house, the one you inherit from your parents, and we were old enough to do something different and also courageous, and our children are out of home. So we decided to do something crazy, not the first crazy thing we did in our lives, but the next craziest thing we did was that. The first one was living in Torino, Italy, where we couldn't even get our permit because nobody's Italian, nobody works in Italy. There's no law for people who. The second one is going to this is how it looked, you see? And there were only walls. There were no windows. There were only rats and pigeons. When we came in the sleeping bags, we brought our sleeping bags there. There was no light like that, but we had fantastic internet, whipping. So we just dressed up and spent all the night with a bottle of wine, fantasizing about this future home, that we'd make there. And what I must say what I really liked about that place, Fab Lab Torino around, and the makers movement, was that you had these brilliant young people who abandoned their steady corporate jobs, because they didn't want to do something boring. Politecnico in Torino is rather famous, so you have this. And they came there and they were trying to do crazy stuff, something different. But what's the problem with people, engineers, Politecnico, is that they often don't have, they think in the box. They don't, they're too precise, too intelligent. They don't think that you can make some impossible stuff. So I said, not being a designer, not being an engineer, ideal. I can tell them all the stupid things that I imagine, and they said, yes, sure, it's possible. Because everything is possible. So I wanted to have a, yeah. Move on. So this is after 3 years exactly. 3 years exactly. Look at this. This is Casa Jasmina now. And we have a kitchen. We have a bathroom. We have dirt. We have trash can, because usually when you make this a house of the future, as they call them, though I don't believe in future, I must tell you. I'm obsessed by past, and I think present is very heavy, so future is just something that is thrown onto us, what you do in the present. The house of the future, I mean that they make like big fancy corporate places in Milano, Fiera di Milano, we saw, they have no dirt. They're scary. They're scary. You know, you enter there and nobody could live there because, you know, it's not house, it's a home. And home means that you do your own shit there. You know, it's the most beautiful place in the world, you call it, because it's your home. And it doesn't have to be good taste, you know, this is the point. So we expanded in our bad taste, okay? Look at this. This is an IKEA bed brought from our old rented flat, you see. This is our little Roomba. I love it because an 80-year-old woman from inner Serbia, when she saw the Roomba moving, she said, I want it. It's so cute, you know. So we brought it there and said, okay, we should hack it because we like hacking things, you know. And this is the street art done. You see it? Bruce is destroying you. Street artist from Belgrade called the Kraljica Vila, TKV. She did this inside, you know. And this is the little lamp called Goodnight Lamp, Alexandra Sonsino Duchamp, you know, at Goodnight Lamp. It is connected, you know. And it is a lamp that connects you and whom you love to the other part of the world, you see. I don't know if you saw that. But you see how it is. It's nothing fancy. It's very low-key. And this is the moment a year ago, we had Electronic Arts Festival, which we curate all these years that were in Torino. And we have in the jury 2 guests of honor, especially. It's Samantha Cristoforetti, you know, she's the astronaut. And this is Paola Antonelli, the curator of Design Museum of MoMA, you see? And this is our library, you see behind, and this is the jury. And after 3 years, we became, I don't know why, more famous than we deserve it. But also we became fancy, I don't know why. People from museums started to come and say, we like it because it's so low-key, because it's so dirty, because, you know, stuff that, you know, really, it had an appeal, and because it's open source, and because it's available, I guess, you know, many little reasons that add up to the fact that real people are living there. And I don't take, being like the hostess of Casa Jasmina, I don't take any bullshit like, if you bring me something really fancy, really great, science fictional from the future, you know, I don't, if it's not comfortable, if it's not pretty, if it's not useful, you know, I look at it for 2 hours and say, like, take it back home, please, you know, put it on spaceship or something like that. And speaking to Samantha Cristoforetti, who is like, you know, the woman who spent most time in the outer space, a woman. And when she was telling me about her experience of, you know, what she learning there, she said, okay, I bring it back to Earth, whatever I learned there, and then I try to experiment, you know, with, in everyday life, because, you know, you live only a couple of hours in science fiction. Then, Bruce, I'm gonna, okay, this is my pride and joy. This is my really after like a year, I noticed in a conference I was invited, that 100 people, I was surrounded, 99% men, only 3 women. One was me, and they were even paying me to speak. One was a secretary, and she was highly educated woman who could have done, you know, better job than me. And the third one was the mom of the organizer, okay? At that point, I realized that I always do men's jobs, you know. I mean, like film and all that kind of stuff. I was always surrounded by, but I realized that if you do domotica and the home of the future, and you don't have children, you don't have women who think in a different way, you will fail. But in a tragic way. We're not, you know, I don't care about clients, about users, you know, I think it's bullshit, really, clients and users. These are words that should be abolished, you know, we're open source, you know, we do our own stuff, you know, we invent it, you know, but really, yeah. Yeah. So I organized a first group of Internet of Women things. You see, this is a little poster that we made, and it was based on La Donna Elettrica. It was electricity in the beginning of the century, and it was a famous poster by the beginning of last century, not this one, yeah, the one previous. So we did now this is going to be internet. It's not going to be electricity anymore, you know? So I wrote this manifesto, and among you is our first Rachel Uva from Texas. You see, I'm surrounded by Texans, you know? And she was also the first meeting when we were thinking, you know, about what are the approaches, how women think about internet. They think in a different way. I won't tell you 7 ways that I came up with because I wrote a manifesto. I will tell you one thing which is very important for you, because I know you're all political just like me. The first thing that women think about is privacy and not to be connected. So how do you get in your home not to be connected? Which are the free spaces? They think of designing those spaces. They think of political issues after post-Snowden. As you say, everything is post here, you know, post-Snowden. So meaning, like, you know, everything is controlled, Apple, Google, Facebook, and they're very aware of it because the privacy, I think women have the history of being violated in their privacy, in their bodies, you know, so they think about it. So the last are the first, really, you know. I won't tell you about other issues, but they're very important. And I have now a movement all over the world. We have shows, we have workshops, we're producing stuff. Personally, I want to produce a smart laundry line. I will tell you something about it. It's a fantastic idea, fantastic about it. A very smart laundry line where you do your laundry, you know. I mean, I'm obsessed with laundry, you know, and how you have to show it. Okay, let's go. Let's go, Bruce. Okay, this is for Bruce. Come on. You should talk about that.
Yeah, okay. That's okay. I got my own microphone. Have a seat, baby. Oh yeah, okay, right. So, you know, this is the responsive design world to our intervention there. And I'm a design journalist as well as a science fiction writer, so it's not super surprising that when we get so much attention. But in fact, we did get a lot of attention. And we came up with a kind of, after a while, a characteristic kind of design look for the place, which I think is, you know, one of the most interesting problems we have in Casa Jasmina. It's like, okay, it's pretty easy to make objects out of plywood or to, you know, 3D print connectors, and these are kind of well-established things, but it's more like, what does this actually look like in a domestic context? I mean, what is a maker home supposed to look like aesthetically? So, you know, people have argued about it. There's like router aesthetic and the rest of it. This is what we seem to have settled on after like a couple of years. I think this is the period look. I call it plywood and projectors. Plywood and projectors is what you get if you sort of have a contemporary maker home. So you can see we have this device, this little table or stool or a mini tavola, which is, you know, pieces of router cut plywood held together with a chair. It's a chair held together with a rope. It's kind of like, interestingly, it's got tension and it's got like stacked stuff. And then we have this, you know, kind of new media intervention where we've got just sort of digital data and various kinds of images just kind of whipping through the house. And, you know, we have a leftover Balkan rug because Mina's very keen on us having, on it not being, you know, super futuristic, that it needs to have kind of local roots and historical roots and really look like a lived-in environment. So here we're getting quite political, you know, Mina's quite into that. So we're very into Internet of Things issues because we're like right across the hall from the Arduino office in Torino. We're upstairs from the Fab Lab, or right next to a co-working design space. So, you know, we spend a lot of time in this house discussing how people should live under an Internet of Things regime. And this is a manifesto that came out from, you know, friends of ours in ThingsCon Berlin, ThingsCon London, other kinds of creative technology people involved in a kind of alternative IoT scene. And practically every truism in this manifesto, every declaration, is in the face of GAFM, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. There's nothing going on in here that actually helps the interests of the majors. But the majors are where the industry's going, because they've got the money, they've got the technology, they've got the employees, and so forth. So here we've got, you know, the IoT investment space, and we're exceedingly keen on following this, because we're not of it. We're the opposite of this. We're the alternative Internet of Things. And there will be an alternative Internet of Things if there's an Internet of Things at all, in just the same way that there was an alternative Internet for, you know, the past 40 years of my life. And, under no circumstances do Jasmina and I really want to collaborate with these other enterprises. I mean, we're not particularly upset about them, but we understand them as the heirs of the railway companies, the TV companies, General Electric, Ford Motor Company, the highway system. We're alternative people. We find them boring. Their values don't reflect our values. Our values are a little more like this. I mean, this is at least sort of a positive way forward. This is the existence proof. Okay, if people like us do nothing about it, these people are going to dominate the board culturally. But there are a lot of people like us, kind of tons. Where are the rest of the problems? Cybersecurity, oh my gosh, there's a hell of a lot of problems here in IoT. It's coming apart at the seams, mostly because of criminals and what is it? What can you call it? State-supported cyber warfare people, professional bandits of all kinds. It's not like the early internet where sort of everything was flat and everybody was sort of okay and in a school or in the EDU or the .gov or whatever. This is contemporary post-internet society, which, is the internet that we have come to deserve, and it has all the political difficulties of our political difficulties generally. And, I could just go through here as somebody who used to write about computer crime, many years ago, and I could tell you the heritage of every one of these major problems. And, to ignore them is absolutely foolish, and if you're not aware of these, it's like not being aware of, menaces in coal mining, or, not understanding, traffic rules on a highway, or not understanding, other forms of menace and banditry and so forth. But, we don't find this intimidating. On the contrary, it's kind of exhilarating to get next to it, and this shows how much actual trouble there is in this kind of, imaginary VC world where everybody sort of lays down the money and they all get an exit strategy. I mean, this is what's in the way of that vision, and that's some pretty hairy stuff. So, what became of this plan of ours? Well, we said we'd do it for 2 years just to see what it looked like, because we don't consider ourselves landlords. And, now it's actually a completed little space. I mean, it's Casa Jasmina. It's even on Airbnb. You could rent it if you wanted. It's kind of Bruce and Jasmina's party house. We have little, meetings in there. Sometimes corporate people show up. We don't mind them. They're okay. Government people are there. They're great. The United Nations is there.
We sit there and we eat, and they just, we're sitting there or in bed, lying in bed, dawdling, as we say, and with our computers, and people just zoom by, and we just ignore them, like John and Yoko, like art. This is kind of like, the first time when it happened, it wasn't really pleasant, I must say, But then we're just, they zoom, they go, they pass by, we just say like this,
People think of it as an art project because there's only one of them, and also because we spend a lot of time in the electronic art scene, and there's a lot of art in the house. I mean, Casa Jasmina has a lot of art objects in it, but that's because we think a house just should have art objects in it. The ideal situation for us, the kind of victory condition, would be a lot more of these kinds of vernacular maker homes. And this isn't a squat. It's not like an accident. It's actually kind of civilized and even kind of luso in some ways. It's almost like maker luxury. It's rather chic. I mean, if you go in and it's got really nice kitchen, the food's kind of great, The bedroom's really comfortable. I mean,
But the makers didn't learn ergonomics yet. Yeah. Okay. They make those chairs which are so uncomfortable.
So we encourage other people to try this. And I think it costs less than you would think, and it's actually very handy if you're running a fab space or one of these other kinds of network culture spaces to have a place where you can talk to your friends from Norway, Brazil, wherever you odd people are from. People of no fixed address, Monica Bielskite style. And so to say, so Monica, why don't you just drop on by and stay? Right? Just like, we're glad to have you. You could have a little seminar, You can meet our group. We'll feed you. We'll put a roof over your head. We won't charge you anything. If you want to give us money because you're corporate or whatever, that makes you feel better. We're not going to slap your hands. But, we've got an open source kind of house here. Or we did. So this is our own house. You know, and I think maybe Jasmina should tell us about this. This is our marital bedroom.
Well, the fact is that we couldn't really, we couldn't have that house, Casa Jasmina, for our own because of legal things, you know. So this is like how our real bedroom looks, where we are spending most of the time. You see how many plugs, you know, and very often, I mean, I guess it's your bedrooms look the same way, you know, and often I wake up with my face like scarred with this, you know, really, you know, everything that can, you know, and I don't mind it. This is the best part. I love it. You know, I love it. I don't even know what the word multitasking means. I want it all. I want it fast. I want everything to be around me. I don't care if it's dangerous. I don't think even it's dangerous. But sometimes, I don't know if you know this, right? Everybody has a passion, you know, and I like that kind of stuff, you know. I don't know if you know the writer Ingeborg Bachmann. You know, she's an Austrian great writer she was, you know, and she was a really good playwriter, but she loved to smoke, you know, and she died because she burned in her own bed because her cigarettes stay alive, you know. So this is how it will really look great in Wikipedia, you know. She died strangled by her own devices, you know, because she didn't, you know, she had everything there, you know, she just pushed the buttons, you know, and it's like, I would really feel...
Those are the kind of bedtime conversations the missus and I really enjoy having. That's the, you know, the mix of Balkan sensibility and cyberpunk right there. But, you know, we should explain that Casa Jasmina is in a formerly derelict Fiat factory. You know, like a lot of kind of creative technology spaces in Europe, it's basically in a former industrial plant, which is a stuffed animal. And that's why we couldn't simply buy the place outright. It's actually part of a much larger area of Turin, which is kind of like the Culture Brewery in Berlin, if you've ever seen that, a kind of giant dead beer factory that's turned into kind of a culture space. And ours is kind of a giant dead foundry, which is turning into kind of an open source culture space. But then we learned lessons from Casa Jasmina that we took to our actual apartment, which is in a rather nicer area of Torino. And here you see Jasmina's bedside table, which has like a Bluetooth speaker, a couple of memory sticks, a magnetic laser, an LED thing magnetically attached to it, and a clock projector, just kind of stuck on there. You know, just because we kind of got used to it, and we've kind of made it part of our own domestic life. This kind of maker scene. See if I can get this guy to click here. There we go. You know, and here's like our hall where we've got like natural gas piping. And because we're like became so aware of infrastructure, we like painted all our piping bright red. And then we started hanging conference tags off of it because we were required to go and lecture about our house so often that we just kind of like came back from events like yours and we hanged them on this thing under the cowboy admiring high technology there. So, you know, this is something that has actually worked out for us because, you know, we would have natural debates on what the interior of a house ought to look like. Should it have, you know, Belgrade-style stuff? Should it have a lot of American gear in it? Is it, you know, masculine? Is it feminine? What kind of plates do we have? I mean, every couple faces these kinds of problems, but our experience with this kind of maker culture thing has allowed us to you know, resolve those potential conflicts on kind of a higher plane. So, so you know, here we are, and actually, what I think is one of the nicest places I've ever lived. I mean, this is our Turinese apartment, and here we've got this mechanical industrial bookcase, and you know, we're book people. We still like books. Jasmina's on the internet. She's burning it up with the old wireless broadband there. We got high-speed fibra ottica. They had to dig up the streets. You know, and you can see that we've adapted this habit of just kind of clipping, sticking, and pasting technological objects into our environment. We don't drill holes in it. We don't tattoo it on ourselves. You don't have to swallow a steam engine to have like an industrial revolution. On the contrary, it's kind of a domestic plug-and-play situation, kind of simple in some ways. It's not, you know, it's not super annoyingly high-tech, but you know, it's got regional stuff in it. She's got like her New Mexico poncho there. You know, she's wearing Texas Longhorn tights, right? Yeah, but you know, it doesn't look like some kind of, you know, frightening clash of cultures. On the contrary, it's really kind of an okay home space, you know, and when we're not in it, we miss it. And, you know, I think we learn kind of valuable lessons from our utopian experiment. And so, you know, I would conclude, you know, by saying about utopias that you should never trust one without an expiration date. You gotta have an exit strategy from a utopia. That you have to have utopia and permanent beta. And you know, it was, I think, a wise thing for us to deliberately choose to do this idealistic thing that involved a lot of sweat equity and a lot from us and a lot of political discussion from us. We kind of went into it with our eyes open. We thought, how are we going to get out of this? It was the idea that we would get out of it eventually that I think actually made it successful. If we were trapped in the place and we had to sort of work at it continually, I think it would have become a burden and we would have had compassion burnout. So you know, I think we learn permanent lessons from it and we live in a better and more settled way now. What do you think?
And I want to say also some practical things, you know, that when things are too smart, they don't work very often well. Like, you know, I really spent a year sleeping on a smart cushion and on a smart mattress, and it doesn't work. I'm stiff. You know, so I'm really going back to half smart, you know, but it's because it costs a lot to buy that thing. And, you know, I found out that also one of the most beautiful things in this, when you enter an empty flat with some kind of burden of inheritance, is like take your grandmother's chandelier or something old and hack it, retrofit it, do something or throw it away, you know. There are no middle ways. Don't live with this kind of burden. And also what I found out, which is very important for the futures of the makers and Internet of Things and Internet of Women things, is that not the best product, not the cheapest, not the most expensive, not the most intelligent, not the smartest, not the stupidest, this will survive, but the one which is fits the cultural environment of the place where you're doing it. Because, for example, Italians like to make espresso coffee the way they do it. They don't want a machine to do it. They have their own machine. So, you know, you have to do it. You have to respect the cultural things because people want to be happy. They want to enjoy their life, you know. They don't want to be only smart and futuristic. Like in Serbia, everybody has to do this coffee like this because, it's, you know, have a cigarette and it's a somber ritual every morning. You can't make them have a smart, quick coffee like Americans who are like, you know, time and money like Californians all the time like that. You know, and this is like very important because this kind of Casa Jasmina can be Casa whatever, Casa Goethe in Germany, Casa, you know, here in Spain, you know, whatever. And this is like what I found out because it's also a new philosophical and economic way of living, which you younger generation must do because you have no other option, thanks God, you know. I mean, thanks God the system is broken. You know, I come from a broken country, and I know it was a big trauma in the beginning, but I'm glad, you know, that I'm free of any country and any nations and any illusions and any utopias without an exit plan, as Bruce says. Thank you.
At home.
In randomness, we trust.